Hello and welcome to the Rise of Sustainable Health and Wellness Ecosystem breakout session. Hope you enjoyed the North America Innovation Forum plenary session, and thank you for joining us here today. I'm Shashwati Kollam, Chief Technology Officer for TCS Healthcare Business, and I will be the host for your session today. The definition of holistic health and wellness has multiple aspects, starting from physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and sometimes even financial as well as social. Economic inequities, government regulations, policies, lifestyle changes, modifications, and even aspects like sustainability or global events are impacting the ecosystem of health and wellness. So, and add to it, the COVID-19 pandemic that we have experienced, it has accelerated the need to harness both the individual as well as the social will in order to achieve affordable as well as value-based healthy living extensions. So over the next 60 minutes, we are going to hear from a range of experts from various sectors, starting from life sciences to healthcare, energy and resources, public services, as well as retail and finance, as they look at the implications of this rising health and wellness ecosystem. And they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But in this digital era, what I like to say is that a video is worth 1,000,000. So we begin this journey by giving you a glimpse of TCS's belief on health and wellness through this short video. The pursuit of health and wellness is a basic right and a shared fundamental responsibility. This TCS belief statement becomes even more meaningful, even more poignant, at least for me, is because it puts the member, the patient, the consumer right at the center of an ecosystem. To take this thought further, we have two of our TCS thought leaders who have joined us today. Let's welcome Vikram Karakoti, VP and Business Unit Head for TCS Life Sciences Business, and Nitin Kumar, VP and Global Business Head for TCS Healthcare Business. Vikram and Nitin are going to talk about the innovations in life sciences and healthcare, and also the unprecedented opportunity for collaboration and innovation across the value chain, taking a very human-centric approach. Welcome, Vikram. Welcome, Nitin.
Thank you, Shashwati, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to the global audience. Very apt topic, given what we all have witnessed in last 1.5 years. Without doubt, this pandemic brought an unprecedented collaboration across the entire health and wellness ecosystem. And this was possible only through sheer innovations, collective knowledge, and acceleration of digital technologies, which we witnessed at every node of this ecosystem. This for sure is here to stay. And we believe the next new is about hybrid human, who is device savvy, who is augmented, and someone who lives like a cyborg. It's about hybrid world, where we believe virtual and physical world will coexist, something like metaverse. And it's no longer about just the health, but about health and wellness, where attributes like mental, physical, financial, emotional, and even social factors are going to play a very important role. Customers and patients of today and tomorrow want the best possible service in the best possible manner anywhere they are. And this is the dynamics which we are witnessing very closely by working with the leading life sciences and healthcare customers, and are fortunate to be partnering with them in many of these initiatives. We are witnessing that life sciences companies are gearing up their innovations, which are focused around reducing the patient burden and the threshold to therapy. And this they are doing by bringing a seamless integration right from the clinical bench to the point of care. They are focused on improving the patient experience by in areas like therapeutic compliance through channels like monitoring, medicine monitoring, alerts, so on and so forth. And they are very much focused on improving the therapeutic efficacy by doing innovations in collaboration with devices companies for a better targeted drug delivery. We are witnessing that they are very focused on working with all elements and all partners in the ecosystem to create a ubiquitous workflow to ensure agile care is available to all the humans. Advanced diagnostics is something which all the diagnostic companies are focusing on today. And the focus there really is to ensure that these companies are able to detect the disease and the syndrome much ahead of the time. Talking about research and development, we saw the ecosystem of startups, academia, biopharmas, medical devices, hospitals, and even NGOs all came together last year to bring COVID vaccine in a record 6 months' time. By and large, we are witnessing three important tracks of research in biopharmas. The first one is focused on meeting unmet medical need with research on new proteins and kinases. Second one is focused on personalized therapy. A good example is CAR-T. And the third track is about quantitative sciences, where model-based drug discovery is leveraging AI/ML extensively to create end-to-end pipeline. And a good example of this is the pipeline created by Atom Consortium, which has companies like GSK and many other pharma companies. Medical devices companies, the digital adoption has already accelerated in areas like robot-assisted surgery, and even in areas like minimal surgery or improving the quality of life through better implants. In near to long term, we see quantum computing and even 5G playing an important role to further accelerate these innovations. Talking about manufacturing and supply chain, future is definitely about smart manufacturing. In TCS, we call it neural manufacturing. While continuous manufacturing will have to scale, pharma companies are equally focused on having adaptive and modular manufacturing to cater to very specific needs. Supply chains of future will have to be reimagined and also be resilient. A good example is CAR-T as a personalized therapy. If it has to really scale, the supply chain of entire ecosystem will have to be completely reimagined. Ecosystem play comprising of manufacturers, pharma companies, suppliers, logistics service providers, public health, all came together last year to again manufacture and supply vaccine in record time. This for sure is going to change this space in near future. We will also see emergence of micro supply chain in near future, and drone-based medicine delivery is something which we are pretty sure we will see in near term. With this, let me now invite my dear friend and colleague Nitin Kumar to talk about innovations we are witnessing in healthcare.
Thank you, Vikram. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you this morning. As Vikram said, it's a privilege for all of us at TCS to work with our customers in healthcare and life sciences industry who have all come together to fight this pandemic and bring us to where we are today. I don't think it was imaginable 18 months back when we were struck with this pandemic that together we will not just invent the vaccines, but we'll be able to bring these vaccines and administer them at the scale. Today we have about close to 4 billion people who have been administered at least one dosage of vaccine. The ride here has not been easy. And I think the efforts put by all of our customers across the healthcare and life sciences industry, the governments, the public agencies, various NGOs, community who have come together to make this happen. I think that creates a huge hope and belief in possibilities. We have a consumer today who's much more closer to technology. The pressure, the constructive pressure which the pandemic has created on science, on technology, and on creativity, I think creates new solutions for the future, right? And in my opinion, today we live in a world which has huge amount of data which we've gathered in healthcare over the last few decades. We have huge amount of computing, networks, 5G. We have smart devices. And we have a very, very aware consumer who's ready to adopt and embrace technology very strongly. Right? With what we saw in telehealth, it was unimaginable as well that we would have such level of collaboration between caregivers and patients to work in virtual settings. We're talking about doing diagnostics, treatments, urgent care from home today. That was not possible without these interventions and innovation. I think we live in a world today where the consumer is seeking more, not just efficacy and transparency and affordability in healthcare, but seeking a very good, strong omni-channel experience. And it is possible. Our customers are taking strong initiatives to drive a strong orchestration in healthcare, drive wellness, and deliver care in new care settings by use of science and technology. So these are very exciting times. We are very honored to work with our customers to solve these problems and create new possibilities in healthcare and life sciences. And I look forward to working with all of you on an ongoing basis. Thank you for your time this morning. With that, Shashwati, over to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, Nitin. I love the quote from Yuval Noah Harari, which says that Homo sapiens, you and me, are very similar that existed about 10,000 years back. But the next revolution is going to change that. The change is already beginning to happen. It is all because of the technology advancement and the adoption that has happened from life sciences, from healthcare, as well as all the associated consumer industries like retail and CPG and so on and so forth. So in my view, that future is already here. So to examine this aspect of digital technologies and how they enable acceleration of innovation, we go on to our next speaker, Kannan Natarajan. Kannan Natarajan, who is our keynote speaker, is the Global Head of Biometrics and Data Management at Pfizer. Kannan, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Shashwati, for the invitation and having me actually come and join for this TCS Innovation Forum. I'm Kannan Natarajan. I'm the Global Head of Biometrics and Data Management at Pfizer. And today I'm actually going to talk about how technology could make a huge impact in terms of clinical trials which is a significant component when it comes to the ecosystem of patient healthcare. As part of actually the pandemic, as during the last 2 years, we learned actually that innovation is going to make a huge impact actually how we do clinical trials as we move forward in the future. And since most of the clinical trials were impacted significantly over the last 2 years due to the pandemic. More importantly, actually, over the last decade or so, where we are looking at the drug development program, we realize the fact that the challenges with the current drug development program are more in terms of the cost. That average cost of developing a new drug is over $1 billion. And the speed in which the drugs are usually brought into market from lab site to market or to patients' access exceeds close to around 10 to 15 years. In many cases, most of them are operationally driven, and those could be easily actually circumvented by using technology and innovation platforms. The other aspect which is critical is that pharma has pretty much stagnated in terms of the use of technology compared to actually any other industry. And certainly it applies to actually to all of the life sciences as well, where there is a significant lack of use of technology in drug development. More importantly, even in discovery, there are many unmet treatment needs, particularly in neuroscience, oncology, and rare diseases. And certainly actually personalized medicine is going to be the future. And again, high dimensional computing would be critical for getting therapies more personalized to individual patients. I'm going to take you through more in terms of where potential technology solutions can enhance clinical development efficiency. And each of these different boxes that I'm going to talk about are various elements of it which could make a huge impact in improving the efficiency in which the clinical trials are being conducted, and how these could actually improve the speed in which actually these are being done, and also improve the efficiency and reducing the cost. Overall, I would say in terms of patient centricity, the first one is the innovative technology to assess digital endpoints. Right now, most of these trials are being site-centric, where most of these are being brought in, patients are brought into the sites in order to actually to address or at least have endpoints being collected. Patient centricity is going to be critical, where we go to the patients in order to actually to get some of these endpoints, rather for them to come to the sites to actually get these assessments done. The second element is the population diversity. Over the years, and it's becoming more and more clear, at least in the US, that the lack of diversity in addressing the risk benefit has become more and more clear. In many diseases, including multiple myeloma, which has a majority or a predominant prevalence in African Americans, where if you look at most of the clinical trials that have been conducted, most of them included Caucasians, very few African Americans were included. The third element is the patient recruitment. Having electronic access to electronic medical records to identify potential eligible study participants to trials is going to be critical. Now we do now started using actually some of these access to these electronic medical records to assess whether the trial is feasible even before the start of the trial, because we do the simulation based on the certain inclusion exclusion criteria and find out whether such a trial is even feasible to recruit. The third or the fourth element is the retention part. As I mentioned before, trials have often been more site-centric, where there is an enormous burden on patients to come into the sites for making most of the assessments. Decentralized clinical trials, or DCTs, as it's what's called, decrease both the burden for the participants and as well as the caregivers, contributing to patient retention, which would require a digital solution to ensure that the appropriate assessments are being done in a timely manner, and sharing that information to the site and the investigator in a timely manner as well. Data collection, this has taken actually a leap over the last few years, but certainly not yet at the place where we should be. Wearables with digital watches, sensors, and electronic data capture systems and also, most importantly, direct extraction of information from electronic medical records is becoming actually more the norm as we move forward. Regulatory approval. This is an area where we have not made actually much progress. In the early days where regulatory submissions were done by paper, but many health authorities are still actually relying on that paper submission. But electronic submissions, which could be actually a big impact by using cloud platform, cloud-based technology for data submission and review, could make a huge impact. And there's already a progress that is being made across different regulatory agencies, including the Food and Drug Administration and European agencies as well, using the Accumulus platform. And last but not least, once the drug is reviewed and approved by the health authorities, the critical aspect is the patient access. Most important actually aspect of it is comparative effectiveness using real world evidence for pricing and reimbursement. That's going to be a critical one. And the digital solutions plays a huge important aspect for across all of these, as you see. I'm going to talk more on the element of diversity, and I'm going to give you an example in which where we have actually pushed forward on the technology aspects and what AI and our machine learning and natural language processing could make a big impact. The imperatives for enhanced diversity in drug development is clear. The lack of diversity has put us in a situation where the generalizability of the results becomes much more difficult. And more importantly, racial and ethnic minorities are historically underrepresented in clinical trials. When you talk about the healthcare and the ecosystem, there is a moral, ethical, and a scientific actually aspect, which is basically clearly has not been met with respect to reaching out to individuals of ethnic minority and racial minority. And there are many guidelines that have been formulated relating to diversity in the NIH in 2017 and FDA as well in 2016. What we did, what Pfizer has been committed in 2020 was it has greatly expanded the clinical trial diversity initiative. We published a paper which presented all of the racial demographics across all of the trials that were done from 2015 to 2020, which gives us actually an open book, which says where are the gaps and how do we actually go about addressing it. There is also one of the key things that we are planning to do is to actually assess an approach that integrates the US Census and the real world databases, particularly Optum, where would be used to actually to assess the epidemiological literature of the prevalence of some of these as we move forward. The objective is to actually to have a rigorous, reproducible, and transparent process. And more critical aspect of it is an equitable goal to increase diversity based on the epidemiology of the disease in some cases, like for example, sickle cell disease, which is predominantly in African Americans, less in Caucasians, or at least US Census, when we know that there is no biological evidence to suggest otherwise. Challenges, of course, is the data sources. Most of these data sources have differing strengths and limitations. There's no perfect choice. And the epidemiological literature are often actually inconclusive because if the access to healthcare is going to be limited for some of these racial and ethnic minority, how do we actually know that the disease is not actually driven by any biological rationale? There are other considerations beyond just the numbers, which includes the trust in the system, how the racially minority folks who would actually trust this healthcare system, particularly clinical trials, and how do we actually ensure people of various ethnic minorities are also actually part of the investigators who can actually conduct the trials. So I'm going to take you through actually what we have put in place from a tech-enabled real-world data epidemiology assessment. We've started this early this year. We have used an AI tool, particularly to create this epidemiology library using an AI tool with the free text of inclusion of a specific disease. It automatically gives you the ICD codes. So this is actually in production. We have successfully put in place that where an AI tool goes in and actually looks at the different ICD codes and gives you the appropriate ICD codes based on the AI solution. And of course uses the real world data analytics and assembly code definitions for diseases. And this is using the Optum real world evidence, the EMR data So once the ICD codes are actually obtained, then our epidemiology folks can go back and actually assess what is the prevalence across the different age category and also the race and ethnicity. So that gives an immediate actually assessment in terms of how to go about doing the clinical trial. The next element for us is to assess what the published literature out there and what is the incidence or prevalence as is actually being put in place in the public literature. Here, we've started actually this journey in the second half of this year using a tech-enabled epidemiology literature search, using a natural language processing powered literature search tool, which automatically goes and assesses all of the literature in this disease and assesses actually the prevalence and puts it into the library that gives teams a clear avenue to understand what is the prevalence of this disease across the different race and ethnicity. As I mentioned, if there is no strong biological reason to believe that the disease is specific to a specific race or ethnicity, then we follow the US Census in terms of recruitment targets and how to actually go about doing this. I want to finish by actually talking about the barriers of the technology use as well, because not everything is going to be easy and a walk in the park. Technology use in accelerating innovative drug has some huge hurdles as well. Number one, regulation. There has to be, it's long overdue, there has to be a new technology use guidance that needs to be put in place across all of the regulators across different geographic regions. And there has to be a harmonized way of actually assessing this across different regulators around the world. The second element is the patients. As was seen in a number of clinical trials and clinical care, more importantly, during the pandemic, it was clear that there was a huge difference between elderly and the younger patients in terms of use of technology. And certainly actually when it comes to patient care, certainly elderly were left behind on the expertise and comfort with the use of technology. And more importantly, individuals of different race and ethnicity, also there was a difference as well in terms of use of technology and the use and expertise of that as well. The third element is the site. There has to be a robust electronic medical records. But unfortunately, as everyone knows, there are multiple EMR platforms available. And so then that goes back to the concept of an aggregator where we need to actually aggregate this information across different EMR platforms. The fourth, which comes to us as a pharma industry, we're typically risk averse, particularly when it comes to technology and use of technology in various platforms, because we feel that investments in some of these often actually happens as a bottomless pit, and sometimes actually the solution is not at sight. And so this is going to be a critical one for pharma to overcome some of these risk aversions over the years in investing in technology. So I conclude by pointing out the fact that the current paradigm of drug development is inefficient and it's very costly. And there does actually exist a significant opportunity for us to leverage technology. And the COVID pandemic over the last 2 years have clearly highlighted this, that we need to actually accelerate innovation in drug development. Most importantly, we have to enhance the operational efficiency in terms of patient recruitment, data capture, retention, and processing. The potential success factors when it comes to technology is the effective use of this means and ensuring people are comfortable, and the use of it and the modern analytics actually piece is going to be critical as well, whether it's AI, natural language processing, or other elements of using big data mining and other aspects of it. The second would be critical is the best practices of data and system integrity, as many of us have lived through and continue to live through, which is the system integrity as well as the security is going to be critical when it comes to privacy, particularly with patient data, the protection of study participant privacy and confidentiality. Last but not least, the most important aspect I would say is the availability of transparent regulatory framework for technology use in clinical development, which needs to be standardized across multiple regions. And we're yet to actually begin that journey, and I hope actually all of the regulators will start the journey together in the ICH framework. With that, I'll turn the table back to Shashwati. And again, I thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak at this TCS Innovation Forum.
Thank you, Kannan. Being a technologist myself, I can certainly appreciate and fully resonate with your thought process that digital technologies can play a very strong enabling role in crossing some of the barriers, the hurdles that we traditionally have been facing in healthcare systems, be it regulatory requirements, data privacy considerations, interoperability like data interchanges, as well as ease of adoption, acceptance, a change of mindset when it comes at the consumer end. Personally, I feel that digital technologies can actually be a catalyst not only in the rise of health and wellness ecosystem, but also for their sustenance. So let's take a glimpse of how TCS has been using this as a lever for driving innovations in our next video.
Today, we live in a hyper-connected world where businesses must collaborate to thrive. Collaborations create ecosystems. Ecosystems are the new normal. Large-scale adoption of novel digital technologies is lowering the barrier to collaboration. New health and wellness ecosystems are emerging dynamically all around us, with digital as their glue and human at the center. These new ecosystems are set to disrupt the health and wellness experience. A tailored experience that is personal, equitable, accessible, reliable, affordable, and sustainable. TCS powers this very experience through several innovations in our products and services, such as connected digital health, testing and vaccine management, financial wellness, employee well-being, value-based care, digital therapeutics, personalized implants, robotic surgeries, and many more. We believe the pursuit of health and wellness is a basic right and shared fundamental responsibility.
Welcome back. And without any further ado, let's go right into our panel discussion. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very rich, engaging panel with an eclectic mix of business and technology leaders who are going to share their thoughts, as well as exchange views on the topic of health and wellness ecosystem, an unprecedented opportunity for collaboration. And for moderating this conversation, let me introduce you to Nidhi Srivastava.
So, very warm welcome to our panel discussion, the health and wellness ecosystem, an unprecedented opportunity for collaboration. So please join me in welcoming our panelists this morning. Alan Dubel, he's the CIO and Chief Information Security Officer at Stryker. Welcome, Alan. And we have Arun Kumar Bhaskar Baba, Vice President of Global Manufacturing, IT Product Line at J&J Technology. Lovely to have you on this session, Arun. And our next panelist is Sui Gal, Head of Enterprise Technology at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And last but not the least, Magna Hadley, Vice President and Global Healthcare Advisor at TCS. So a very warm welcome to you, Sui and Magna as well. So my first question in our discussion today is to you, Alan. And what I'd love to hear is how are your products leveraging digital technology to provide personalized healthcare to the patients?
You know, as we look at services for healthcare, you know, Stryker's mission has always been, together with our customers, we are driven to make healthcare better. And as we look at making healthcare better, we look at these services and solutions like our Mako robot that, you know, Historically, when you look at orthopedics and joint replacement, we've had a physical device that goes into a human body. And a lot of historically how that would go into the body was very much determination by the surgeon, the operating theater, the environment they were in. But now with products like a Mako robot, you're bringing it in a way that you're becoming very precise on how that device goes into that person. So now we know using a robot, using digital services, as we approach that surgery and the outcome, drastically reducing the time it takes that patient to return back to a normal lifestyle versus historically how we would have looked at it. So digital services really are all about transforming healthcare in a way that matters to the customer and the patient that's actually receiving the services.
Excellent. So now I'm going to turn over to you, Arun. And what I'd like to know is, how is the pharma industry embracing technology? And in particular, how do you see personalization and personalized medicines leading to better outcomes for patients?
Especially as you talked about personalization and personalized medicine, definitely there is a lot of innovation happening in the actual product itself, right? When you look at like gene therapy, right, where we moved from just like chemical small molecule to biologic products to now gene therapy. So there is amazing innovations that are happening in the product. But I go back to what Alan said, right? I totally agree with him. The exciting opportunity for innovation is in the digital side as well, right? And when you look at the pharmaceutical products, and it's kind of like different ends of spectrum of personalization, right? Definitely a personal medicine that you take the sample from the individual, the blood, and we use that to actually make a product that is very specific to that person, that is really personalized medicine. But at the same time, each of the products, like generic products that you get, how do you make sure that each of the patients get the information that is needed for them, right? And these are not tailored for them, but how they take it and how they consume the product and what they see and then what they feel, that is all personalized, right? So how do we actually make sure that we capture the patient experience at individual levels, even for those products, right? And then you come to the mass products like vaccines that we are now actually producing. How do we make sure that we provide the transparent data to the individuals to make the decisions? So if you look at like pharmaceutical, like kind of like go from the extreme of individual medicine to a medicine for a targeted medical innovation to a broad product, all of these things are actually going to be influenced by the digital aspects, right? And it's really about end-to-end ecosystem. When you look at the patient, put the patient at the center with the connected devices and wearables that give you the biomarkers, to the apps and those things that the patients have so that they can actually adhere to the regimen, and the caregivers and others who can actually bring that information, and all the way to the personalized medicine where we have to precisely make the medicine for that individual and give it back. Really that connected ecosystem of all the products actually make it happen. And that's where a lot of the innovation is going to happen in driving this personalized medicine in pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you, Arun. Sri, you are positioned at the point of care for the end customer, and MSK has such a brand in that particular space. With telehealth and connected health becoming mainstream in the pandemic era, how do you see technology shaping or changing the business strategy at MSK?
Let me start by saying that it is clear that telehealth was the predominant technology that emerged during the pandemic. But I think that it is something that is here to stay. So at MSK, what we decided to do is to go beyond just switching the meeting with the doctor to a kind of an online conversation, but try to make it look and feel more like a real physical meeting. So that included, depending on the patients, if there are ongoing patients, etc., it including also taking the vitals while the conversation is happening, as well as sharing records, information, go through the case together, sharing this information in a shared screen and making it feel more like a conversation rather than really an online session. In addition, we are trying to, again, depending on the type of clients and patients, provide them with some IoT-based devices that can take their vitals and can take some other measurements, as well as some testings that we can do remotely. And of course, there is a huge progress that made in the chemo at home. The idea was to enable our patients to continue the treatment even if they cannot come physically to the office. And this is done with the equipment set at the patient's home, but being monitored and supervised remotely by a practitioner, a healthcare practitioner, to make sure that the doses are right, the timing is right, that everything goes right as it should be. Furthermore, we plan to enhance part of the visits, both from telehealth as well as what we call the digital front door, which basically will look and feel like a real visit to our offices. And so telehealth is definitely has changed the industry, and we believe that the change is sustainable. It is a permanent change, and it will just continue to be better and better as time goes by.
Thank you, Svi. So now I'll come to you, Magna. What role has TCS been playing in the fast-changing life sciences and healthcare ecosystem? And if you could give us an example or two, that would be really helpful.
I think the realization that no one stakeholder can solve the problems in healthcare is one of the reasons that ecosystem is being embraced. And there are several drivers that are paving the way for ecosystem models in healthcare. And some of them are, first of all, new entrants to that market with platforms, experiences, are creating business ecosystems and entering the market. Walmart, for instance, has launched cost-efficient outpatient clinics, and tech players such as Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, we refer to them as hyperscalers. They're offering healthcare solutions, cloud services, health data, telemedicine. The second thing is patients are demanding more. Patients, consumers are demanding a lot more. And the reason is they want to see similar things happening in healthcare that they're receiving in other industries, such as banking, retail. The third is technology, the adoption, the creation of new forms of access, interaction and collaboration, secure and cost-effective data sharing solutions will enable the ecosystems. Fourth, what we're seeing, and we're seeing momentum in changing in the regulatory market. We saw that here in the US with the embracing of telehealth. Shri just mentioned it. Is it here to stay? The answer is yes. And the reason why it had to change, COVID sort of drove that and the adoption of it. Providers are being reimbursed for those services, and that is also taking heed in the market too.
So we are going to do a bit of a double click on ecosystems and innovation, because innovation is picking up at a really rapid pace. So Alan, my question to you is, what role do you see Stryker playing as part of the overall ecosystem in improving accessibility to health services for patients?
You know, Nidhi, when you look at where we see healthcare going as it relates to patients and having access to healthcare, obviously it changes so much depending where you reside and kind of the world around you immediately by what country you're in, what region you're in, and the rules around that structure. So when we think about making it accessible, I think the most important thing we look at is, first of all, there's no one size fits all. And so in the old days, and especially in the world of IT, we'd always think as words like cloud and infrastructure as these harmonious global environments. And I think we have to look at it today as we work and live in a very complex world. And so how you go to market and offer services in the US and what you can expose for services in the US, very different than how you look at parts of Asia and how you would go to market in parts of Asia. So the first thing is to make sure as we develop physical and digital services, we really take in mind the flexibility needed to operate and execute those services and products all around the world that deliver that great healthcare experience in a way that drives the right outcomes, also in a very compliant manner based upon the regulatory environment of the world we live in. You know, patient data is very important to Stryker. Privacy is critical to how we operate our business. And we think about how do we expose information to a patient, to a provider, to a payer, to a medical solution analyst that's actually helping drive the outcome. All of these things really matter in how we make sure privacy, regulatory compliance creates that great experience for that regional solution. You know, we've seen companies time and time again fail as they try to bring innovations to market and then realize there's something that's going to make it ineffective in the market they're trying to execute it. And when you think about healthcare, we have a large mission, we have a large accountability, and we have a very, very large path in front of us and what we have to overcome from a complexity standpoint. And the only way we're going to deliver that and really bring innovation and products and services quickly is to really understand the world we live in, the world structure we live in. And then also when we want to bring our scale in at global levels, we're looking things correctly and we're protecting the patient data, we're protecting privacy information, and we're doing it in a way we can leverage our scale, but correctly at the local regional level.
Thank you. Now, supply chains is one of the most visible manifestations of ecosystems in action. And the question that I have for you, Arun, is how are you utilizing the power of the ecosystem to build resilience in the supply chain to ensure that products turn up at the right place, at the right time, in the right quantities, and with the right quality?
That's an excellent question. And I would actually add one more thing, right place, right time, right quantities, and with right quality as well. Right? When we look at Johnson & Johnson in terms of our credo and our responsibility to our customers, our patients, our consumers across the world, it is our responsibility to make sure that they get that product in what they expect. Right? And from a complexity point of view, J&J has pharmaceuticals, we have medical devices, we have consumer products, and then vision care. So all of these businesses, we actually operate a very complex supply chain. But the thing that it really starts from a resilience point of view is you always start with the patient at the center. So it's not enough if just like one node of the supply chain is resilient, you need to make sure that all these nodes are resilient. Right? So the thing that underpins all of this is really having that data. We call it like always on connected digital thread that takes all the way from the supplier all the way to my patient or consumer or customer is extremely important. So that's one of the first things is to really make sure that you have that always on digital thread. And this requires significant collaboration with the partners, right? We have, as actually I think Alan alluded to it, right? The ecosystems are different by where you are. In US, my pharmaceutical products flow in a different way than when I go to China versus when I go to India. So how do you make sure that you have that understanding and that digital thread? But one thing that is really critical is to have that thread and build the ecosystem, whether it is your distributors, whether your suppliers, your pharmacies, and make sure that you can connect that. The second aspect is really the advantage of a lot of the digital twins and real-time monitoring that we are able to bring in that gives us the information in real time. For example, our vaccines, we track them real time through our IoT devices so that we know exactly where that vaccine is. Not only that, we have to monitor whether there was any temperature excursion, right? So the digital convergence of the technology and data is giving us that end-to-end visibility so that I can actually monitor what is happening throughout my supply chain. And on top of it, we actually were able to use simulation modeling software so that we can actually predict what happens in our supply chain, end-to-end supply chain, right? And then react to it very quickly on if a particular lane is shut down, right? So for us, from resiliency really starts with putting the patient at the center and looking at it from end to end, building that always on connected digital thread, ensuring that there is transparency, using the tools and technologies that we have available to really do that planning just in time with the data and the tools that we have, improving the digital acumen of all the partners in the ecosystem, including policymakers and regulatory authorities. I think that is going to be the key for us to continue to build that. And you aptly said, it is a muscle. We need to continue to exercise. And this COVID pandemic has given us so many opportunities. We should not forget that, and we need to continue to drive that.
Thank you, Arun. Now I'm going to ask Sui a question about the digital consumer, because the digital consumer is at the center of the health and the wellness ecosystem. So my question is, how should agile organizations collaborate so that they deliver a rich patient experience?
So the modern consumer today really expects to have a consumer-like experience in their interaction with us. We also need to remember that people, when they come to MSK, they come at the scariest moment in their lives. However, they normally do not need mercy. They don't need pity, and they don't need feeling sorry for. What they really need is warmth and dignity. And if MSK is very famous for treating our patients with both. It starts with the guard in front of the building, through the receptionist, through the nurses and the doctors. And as our COO likes to say, even our billing department really treats people with dignity and with warmth. Now, one of the things that is important for us is to develop this type of experience that keeps this also when we go online. And that's very important because at the end of the day, we are trying to really do the one thing that we do. I mean, the one thing that our institution is all about is curing cancer. And we use the term curing and not treating because we want to go way beyond just the treatment. We want to actually cure it. Part of what we do in the SKI part, the Sloan Kettering Institute, is the research itself. One of the key researches that we are looking at via genomic sequencing is to create, when possible, a biological agent that is based on the person's own DNA to identify, to fight tumors and that are specialized. The dream is that within 5 to 7 years, a person will go to a doctor and the doctor will say, I have some bad news and I have some good news. Well, the bad news, you have cancer. The good news, take this pill twice a day for a month and it will go away. So that's kind of the dream of what we are hoping for. And so that's really what it's all about. Back to you.
Thank you, Sui. So Magna, my next question is for you. Why do you think ecosystems are being embraced by healthcare in such a big way?
So first of all, the healthcare organizations across the care continuum, from hospitals, health systems, health insurers, life science companies, what we find that they must do, they have to digitally transform in order to address the legislative as well as the market disruption that's happening. So the way in which we've been helping is driving a lot of that digital transformation programs for many of our healthcare clients, which requires development of new applications and adoption of new technologies. We've seen it just the pandemic, working from home. TCS was able to easily deploy all its employees who are supporting our clients in that work at home scenario too. We're powering the next generation of healthcare innovation with the frameworks and solutions that we've developed and even some of our products. We have accelerated this innovation and some of it is working with our clients around innovation. What are the things they need to change? Getting rid of tech debt in their companies, modernizing their systems. So a good example that I could talk about is the IoT and how we've deployed it in the homes and having seniors staying at home. And we call it, in Singapore, it was our Shine Senior program. In the US, it's going to be called our Elderly Care program. And using IoT devices, we're able to enable seniors to stay within their homes and where they're safe and comfortable. And should they need urgent care, those alerts, IoT devices will send out messages that'll alert caregivers to come in. If they need an ambulance or other medical information, or they could get that. And how that's done is through the patterns of monitoring their members, monitors the senior population. We all have a pattern, which we don't sometimes realize it, right? We get up every morning, knowing those patterns, knowing how often they would go using these devices, how often they go to the bathroom. We could actually see if they are having an issue, right? A medical issue, and alert the right caregivers. So I think the technology will continue to evolve. Embracing that technology will continue to be revolved, and many of our clients are doing that. And they're looking to deliver these services in a smarter way, but giving the quality of care and keeping the patient, the consumer, at the forefront of everything we do. And I think that's what we as an organization is best positioned to deliver to our clients.
Great. And maybe it is time now to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. So my question for you, Alan, is that as you look at the hyper-connectedness in how we experience life today, what do you think are the drivers or trends that are going to shape the face of healthcare in time to come?
I really don't see a lot of change coming at us against that rate of change. I do believe we are finding ourselves now in this connected world, whatever you want to call it, that's not going to back off from this power of collaboration, this power of data and information, and the need to transform healthcare with a digital and physical connected environment. And I also believe we're going to continue to see a world where it's going to become more complex to do business in a regional level and a local level based upon not just regulatory policy, but also physical constraints that we're going to have to deal with. I think we're going to see energy fluctuations, supply chain difficulties. We're going to see manufacturing labor shortages. We're going to see technology battle for resources. All of these things are going to make sure that any company that's going to survive and thrive going forward has to continue to be nimble and flexible in how we continuously look at risks, look at information, and make rapid decisions to serve the needs of our customers and to continue to transform healthcare. So the crystal ball is, there's going to be a need for real-time connected data. We're going to need to be continuously working in these hybrid collaborative models because employees are going to be scattered around the world, being twice as efficient, leveraging technology in a way we've never thought about before. How do we do that in a way that also leverages delivering those great outcomes with these constraints that we're managing and that power of digital, the power of decision making, and how do we leverage those tools around AI, ML to make those powerful decisions correctly faster is going to be something we're going to have to make sure we continue to address.
Thank you. Arun, we are harnessing the abundance of data and AI to deliver better customer experiences to the stakeholder chain. And here I'm talking about patients and physicians and hospital administrators, payers and providers. Can you give us some insight as to how you see data and AI making healthcare better for the future?
When we look at like real world data, real world evidence, which are playing an extremely increasing role in healthcare decisions, How do you bring the AI and data to actually make those decisions, not only for the patients and for the providers, but also payers. Payers are also very much interested in the same real world data and real world evidence. So how do you make sure that you bring those tools to provide that evidence to the decision makers, right? And as you all know, it's a complex ecosystem. You have decision makers from the patients to the caregivers to the providers to the payers, and to an extent even the regulatory agencies. So using those things and making sure that all of them can actually accept the AI and tools is going to be extremely critical. Once that is kind of like getting matured, then you will actually see that impact the entire healthcare spectrum, right? Be it from a discovery point of view, right? Be it from the actual production and supply chain, all the way getting to the customer, and then actually moving us from the treating of disease to getting into wellness. So if you look at that whole entire chain, every single chain is going to be impacted by the data and AI. The key challenge for us is to how do we really focus on it, right? I already explained some of them in the product side of it. When you look at the supply chain, our customers expect to receive the orders on time, exactly as they promised, right? And with all the fluctuations and happening, we are actually bringing AI tools to predict how do we get the product to the customer. Right. At the same time, providing the customer the information about what adherence means to them, especially in some of our products or in the pharmaceutical world. When we look at our product release, using like tools like real-time release, which are based on our artificial intelligence and ML capabilities, that we can convince the regulatory agencies in terms of how fast we can actually release this product with high levels of quality and safety. Right? So if you look at that, the AI capabilities are going to actually touch every aspect of that whole healthcare delivery, all the way from us as the manufacturers to the hospital administrators, the payers, to the customers. The key is for us to really figure out how do we focus on where it really makes a difference. That's number one. Number two is how do we actually collaborate, right? Because we want to make sure that this is an ecosystem. So we need to collaborate and make sure that we use AI in the same way across so that we can make the right decisions, but ultimately putting the patient and the customer at the center, and then really making the healthcare accessible and affordable for them.
So this has been a really amazing discussion, and I want to thank all my panelists here. Alan, Arun, Sui, and Magna, you've been wonderful, and I've just enjoyed this lively discussion with all of you. Thank you so much. And it's time for me to hand the baton back to Shashwati. Thank you.
Many thanks to our esteemed panelists, as well as Nidhi for so expertly moderating it. I think we can all agree that this final session, it made for a lot of engaging conversations around the rise of sustainable health and wellness ecosystem, and what are some of the parameters that are very critical for it to be not only surviving, but actually to thrive. So once again, a big thank you to our panelists and to Nidhi. And that brings us to the close of our breakout session on the rise of sustainable health and wellness ecosystem. We thank each of you for having joined us today. If you would like to view this event again or any part of it, then we will have an on-demand version of this available soon, and you can access it using the same login that you have used to join into the session today. Before you leave, please do take a moment to respond to the survey, as it is very important for us to get a feedback, and that helps us make this event better at every turn. Hope you loved and enjoyed the virtual version, the virtual edition of the North America Innovation Forum breakout session. We surely had a lot of fun putting it together again. With that, hope you have a fantastic day ahead. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay well, and we will see you yet again in our next edition of TCS North America Innovation Forum. Thank you and bye-bye.